Okay, we're at Shanahan's Irish Food and Spirits of Woodridge for a great micro brew tasting, and I'll turn the show over to owner and proprietor Rich Moore.
Thank you, Mike, and welcome to everybody for our first craft beer brewing tasting tonight. We're anxious to try some of these beers. We have some great appetizers here, so if you haven't had any yet, try our meatballs or Jack Daniel meatballs. We also have some Irish nachos, and we're going to be tasting 5 wonderful beers. We have the Domaine DuPage, Abel's Weiss, the Bitter End, Little Something Something, Indian Pale Ale, and Crankshaft, and all distributed by Windy City Distribution. And we have Brandon here with us. So wave, Brandon, say hello to everybody, okay? We also have a couple of guests. We have Andreas, who does a lot of things on the internet and Yelp. Please wave and say hello there, okay? We have a candidate running for office locally. His name is Greg Abbott. Greg, say hello to everybody. All right. Brandon, you want to tell us a little bit about what we're going to be experiencing here in this tasting?
Yeah, I work for Windy City Distribution. We are a craft beer distributor in the Chicagoland area. It's entirely craft beer is what we do. We take it very seriously. So what I hope to accomplish today is just impart you guys with a little bit more knowledge with the hopes that you can better appreciate beer, be turned on to some new styles, eat some good food, and really ultimately just learn a little something. So we'll work through all of the beers going from lightest flavor profile to darkest flavor profile, or heaviest flavor profile. And I'll be able to describe anything you guys want. Hopefully we can keep things casual. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. An interesting fact about my company is there's 10 sales reps and we're all certified Cicerones. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term, it's a certification program that originated in Chicago, basically meant to be the equivalent to a wine sommelier. So it's an extensive test. My knowledge about beer is probably more than anybody would care to know. So if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and hopefully we can have a lot of fun here.
One of the things I wanted to point out is that with the economy the way it is, we thought we would add some microbrewed beers from local breweries who are in this general area. So that's kind of the neat thing of what we're trying to accomplish here. A couple of them are from Warrenville, and Brandon, where are the other ones from? Can you tell us a little bit about where they are being made?
Well, we're going to be tasting beers from 3 different breweries tonight. Two Brothers is brewed in Warrenville, so that's going to be the closest one. Metropolitan is brewed in the Ravenswood neighborhood of Chicago. And Lagunitas, kind of a standout one. It's from Petaluma, California, Northern California brewery, but it has close ties to the Chicago community. The owner, Tony McGee, and his sister, who both work for the company, are actually from Chicago. So they love putting focus on their hometown market. Before we get started, just talking about beer. 4 main ingredients. You have hops, water, malt, or malted grain, and yeast. So my draw to craft beer is just the diversity in styles that you can get from beer. The different flavor profiles. With those 4 ingredients, I kind of make the parallel that it's a lot like music. There's 7 keys in the musical scale, and depending on how you rearrange them, you can get an unlimited amount of outcomes, textures, flavor profiles. That's really the draw for craft beer for me. So like I said, we'll be working our way from lightest beer to most intense flavor profile. What you have in front of you right now is Metropolitan's Crankshaft. Metropolitan is a very interesting brewery to me. Very small. They've only been around for 2 years. It's very locally owned. It's a husband and wife that do everything. The husband, Doug Hurst, trained in Germany, and the wife does, I think, everything else. The husband brews, the wife takes care of everything else. Crankshaft is a Kolsch-style beer, a style that originated in Cologne, Germany. And it's kind of a hybrid between an ale and a lager. It uses an ale yeast, so it's a top fermenting beer, but it's cold conditioned, so it goes through a lagering process to slow things down and offer a really clean flavor. It's pale in color, very light. Does have some wheat in there to kind of soften it out, soften out the hop bite. Great beer for summer. So we got Two Brothers Bitter End coming around right now. It'll be on your table in just a moment. Is everyone familiar with Two Brothers? More and more people. It is your guys' local brewery. Warrenville is maybe 15 miles away, and it doesn't get any fresher than that. So the Bitter End that will be making its way around. It's an American Pale Ale. It's going to be much more flavorful than the Crankshaft. Pale ales are known to have a focus on hops. Another year-round for Two Brothers, another local beer, another very summer beer. This beer in style is a German Hefeweizen. So another beer with wheat in it. This one definitely has more, and obviously is much more cloudy like wheat beers tend to be. Weiss is 5.3% alcohol, so a little bit more than your average beer. The interesting thing I think about this beer is the yeast strain that they use produces a lot of banana aromas. There are no real bananas in there. It is actually a byproduct of yeast going through fermentation. My personal favorite, Lagunitas Little Something Something. Another Lagunitas beer. Definitely the highest in alcohol, 7.5%. And this one, a very unique beer. It used to be a summer seasonal for Lagunitas. You can tell it's very citrusy. It'd be a great beer in summer. And in the Chicago and San Francisco market only, they have introduced it as a year-round. So, for whatever reason, we get to have it when nobody else does, and I'm ecstatic about that. The beer itself really doesn't fit into any clean style. It's a wheat beer, so it's going to be fairly soft on the palate, but it's also very heavily hopped. The hop varietals that they use aren't very bitter. They don't add a whole lot of hops at the beginning of the boil, but they're very, very flavorful.
Well, we're back, and I'm now with Frank from the Stingrays, and Frank was enjoying a lot of great beer as we see here. And first of all, Frank, we'll get right down to it. Which one of all these beers was the favorite for you?
I really like the bitter end, from the Two Brothers Brewery. That was my favorite. I really liked the hops. The hops weren't too floral. They were nice and bitter, and I like a more bitter beer than sweet.
Oh, so you're a bitter beer guy then?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Fantastic. So, I mean, all the beers you probably like, but I know we had tried one that had a little more. Personally, I kind of like the thing with me is I kind of like mid-range. Everything kind of in life with mid-range, not too bitter, not too sweet. Although I kind of could drink the sweet beer, but for me, it's kind of that mid-range. So, I mean, for the sweet beers, could you see yourself drinking that, or?
I have tried to enjoy more sweet beers, and it's just never been something that's worked for me. And if anything, I'll go towards a different taste altogether, like a wheat beer, which is just a completely different flavor. So the sweet caramely beers just don't interest me. So it's either an interesting wheat beer or it's a bitter beer for me.
Fantastic. So, as you mentioned, then you like the bitters end, and that's something you probably order here at Shanahan's,
and have ordered other places too. And I would order it whenever I come to Shanahan's. I would order it.
Okay, and finally, Frank, we want to quickly let everyone know you're in a great band called the Stingrays. They perform all over the Chicagoland area. And quickly, Frank, tell us a little bit about the Stingrays.
Well, we're a four-piece band, very interactive all summer long. We play a lot of festivals. All off-season, we play through clubs all throughout Chicagoland. Some of the nicer clubs, so come and see us. Look us up, thestingrays.com, and you can follow where we're going to be.
Well, we're back, and I'm now with Brandon from Windy City Distribution, who put on an awesome presentation for us tonight. A great job. And it's great, Brandon, that you've been talking about all these different beers. And tell our audience a little bit about what everyone was tasting tonight.
We were tasting a lot of craft beers, really with a focus on locally produced beers. We did Two Brothers beers from Warrenville. We did Metropolitan from Chicago. And Lagunitas, that's a Northern California brewery with really strong ties to the Chicago community.
And as I was telling Frank, that I kind of like a beer mid-range. I like a little sweetness, but more in the middle, not too sweet, not too bitter. So in turn, I kind of ended up liking all the beers that almost.
Yeah, well, I myself like really well-balanced beers. I think there's a lot of beers out there that really push the envelope in whatever direction they're trying to go in. But to me, it all comes down to balance. And so I'm very much like you. I like all the beers too.
And you had mentioned the different food pairings, and with the sweeter beers, chicken and steak and beef. So, I mean, we want to encourage people that they can drink beer with their meal then, yeah.
Absolutely. Beer has changed. Like I mentioned during the presentation, there's now more breweries in the country than there ever has been in history. And with that, there's more opportunities to try different styles. And it's really taken on kind of a more sophisticated approach. The beers offer a lot more flavors that have the ability to sync up to foods and both enhance the food and the beer.
And as we saw here, Brendan, you had different, obviously, colors. Now, let me see if I remember that the color is based on the hops. Is that it, or?
No, the color is based entirely on the malted grain that's used and how deeply it's kiln dried.
Fantastic. So that it's the malt that affects the different. Now, I always wonder, now with the different colors, does that affect the taste or wood because the malt's brewed different? Or?
Yeah, definitely the color definitely influences the flavor profile. You can expect something in the middle often uses amber or crystal malt. So it's kind of right in the middle of the road. A lot of amber ales and red ales will have a caramelized sweetness. But if you go darker than that, they can sometimes produce a burnt bitterness or more pleasantly chocolate, coffee flavors, whereas the lightly roasted grains in lagers are really bready, toasted grain flavors.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, Brandon, and finally, as we mentioned, a lot of these are local beers such as Two Brothers, so I mean there's a lot of great local microbreweries around then.
There absolutely are. Now more than ever. By the end of 2011, I think there's going to be 7 production breweries in Chicago, which is fantastic for everybody. Craft beers for everybody, and that's why I'm here, trying to spread the word a little bit.